Hello. As
Hello.
promised, I am back to kick off this first town hall meeting of the EDUinLOC initiative. My name is Ulrich Henes, one of the co-founders of LOC World and also the president of the Localization Institute. Education in localization has always been a topic close to my heart, and it led me to launch about 4 or 5 years ago the Attracting and Developing Talent initiative. We held meetings around the globe on that topic. Very, very interesting. Unfortunately, it kind of stopped when I got seriously ill in 2018, but we are back in force. I found some additional leaders who want to help me kick this back into gear. And I'm going to move on and introduce the first one, the convener of the initiative. Her name is Dr. Peng Wang, and she is with the Localization Institute. Peng, can you take it from here?
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much for your introduction, Warwick. And it's so nice to see you're back and from 2018. And we have been working very hard on ADT sessions. And now we have the EDUinLOC initiative. And I would like to emphasize that LOC World has always valued the importance of collaborating between academia and industry. And for those who have attended our previous sessions, ADT sessions, please accept my sincerest, deepest thanks. We're so fortunate to have your interest and support. And I would also like to thank Jan and Balin. As you can see on the slide, their pictures. In the past few months, we have been working very hard to prepare for the EDUinLOC launching. And now we are at the town hall meeting. That's so exciting. Thank you so much, Jan and Balin. And I would also like to thank you, Stefan. I know you, Jan and Balin, have been working very hard to prepare for the presentation. And I'm pretty sure that he will bring us fantastic content. I look forward to your speech, but no pressure, just be yourself. Can you move on to the next slide, please, Jan?
Yes.
Thank you. So now, please allow me to introduce a bit about myself. My name is Peng Wang. I'm an educator who has been teaching and researching in 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and North America. For me, the most important people around me, except for my family, are my students, my colleagues in universities and educational institutions, and my colleagues who are in the industry but wanted to give back to the society through education, just like many of you who are joining us today. I teach my students, and my students teach me back. I have learned from them how diversified the market for education is and how diversified their needs are. I'll give you some examples. One group of my students, and they are in their early 20s, undergraduate students, they're longing for a good job after graduation. I have another group of students who come from the industry but wanted to learn more to advance their careers. I admire one of my students who came to my class when she was over 70 years old. She was a court interpreter before joining us, but wanted to learn literature translation to live a more fulfilled life. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution for education. Postgraduates, undergraduates, class, certificate, internship, mentorship, you can be creative. As long as a form of education exists, there must be a reason for it. People say, where there's a will, there's a way. I would say, where there's a student with a need, there is education in localization. Here, I would like to take this opportunity to thank and to say to every one of you that EDUinLOC welcome all types of collaboration, as long as it is good for the students. We come from curiosity, care, and kindness. This spirit for our students, the more, the better. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, and I just want to a few words about the survey results. Thank you so much for participating in our survey prior to the event. The link has been published on our website and also on Remo. I would like to say we heard your voice. We take it very seriously. We will take it from there and we will follow up with you after the meeting. There's another survey after the meeting. Please let us hear your voice. Next slide, please. Okay, all right, and this is the agenda, very brief, and first introduction has already started, and then we will have the discussion between Jan, Berlin, Stefan, and then the round table. Okay, that's it, and thank you so much for your participation. I wish you all a very productive meeting. Over to you, Jan, Berlin, and Stefan.
Thank you very much, Ben. I will briefly introduce myself and then talk a little bit also on EDUinLOC from my point of view. So I'm a solutions architect at RWS, and I also teach localization engineering project management here in Seattle at the University of Washington. So how this all started, I created a LinkedIn group back in 2015 called EDUinLOC, and the idea was just to have a platform for discussion of former students of mine and people in the industry. But recently I was contacted by Ulrich about the ADT follow-up and so on. So together with Peng, Ulrich, and Belen, the founding members, we really put EDUinLOC on a completely new level. So now we have a web page. This is the kickoff, the town hall meeting that we are in today, and we're planning a lot of more things. So to point out our goals, here are the objectives. And just very briefly going over these are on our webpage. The link is in the chat window. This is all about communication. We want to bridge between academics and the industry. We want to assist all the educators in creating meaningful syllabi. So the course and the program of the courses are sometimes challenging. You need the feedback from the industry, and that is one of our goals. With respect to the industry, we want to provide means to develop talents and collaborating with the educators. And then there's also a lot of research being done, which we want to promote on our website and become a platform for any research-related topics. And of course, there are other similar activities out there. I'm thinking of Gala, for example, and we want to collaborate. This is not about competition. We want to collaborate and bring this all together. Some things we do not want to do is we don't want to advertise or evaluate any courses, any offerings or something. We try to be bias-free as much as possible. Of course, we all come from the industry and have other priorities, but we try to take this out of EDUinLOC. So I hope this summed it up from my point of view, and I'd like to hand it over to Belen to introduce herself and a couple of points from her side.
Sure, thank you so much, Jan. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm seeing so many friends among the participants, so thank you for joining. I'm Belen, I'm VP of Learning and Lead Media Researcher at Nimdzi Insights at the moment, but I come from the game localization industry as well. I worked on that a few years ago, and also since I started working, I started teaching, because I started in the game localization industry and it was super new. Well, 10 years ago it was new. There was no so much education on that from the university. So there was a lot of interest among our students, and I, from the very beginning, always felt super passionate about sharing my knowledge and help people to feel as passionate as I was feeling for this industry, for the game localization. and yeah, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do both things, work in the industry and teach, and also finalize my PhD last year. So I'm sort of a nerd, academic nerd plus industry professional, and I feel very lucky to be here today and to share some of what we've learned over the years. Just very briefly wanted to share with you that we created this resources page on our website. It's work in progress, sorry, it's not super comprehensive at the moment. But one thing that we want to start doing is to compile all the different localization programs around the world. And we have created this template. So if any of you are a coordinator or part of a localization program and you want to include the information there, please reach out to us so we can include that there. And the aim of that is basically gather data, give visibility, because there are so many great programs all over the world that we might not know, and we want to get to know them. Compare, but not comparing in a bad way, but just to analyze what's the focus on Europe, in the States, in Asia, and try to understand what can we learn from each other. Also find gaps and yeah, basically learn from each other, right? Because we have so much to offer in the different countries. Then we will also be publishing the outcomes from the surveys and events. So if we ask you to fill out a survey, it won't be just for ourselves, but we want to share that with you so that you have all this data. And more to come. We want to publish more content that it's useful for everybody, so stay tuned. And I don't remember the next slide. What was Jan?
Yeah, we just want to make some show an example of the information that we want to gather. So Belén, maybe you can talk a little bit about the university in Barcelona.
Yes, so yeah, I was gathering feedback from the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona and also University of Strasbourg, but today we'll just share one example, just for you to know the type of programs that are here in Europe. For example, in the Autonomous University of Barcelona, they have two programs, one for audiovisual translation and audiovisual accessibility, and one for translation technology. So two different programs, very comprehensive, very interesting. They have online and in-person modalities. The target audience is translation and language graduates, but also professionals that want to know more about these fields of expertise. And they usually take 1 year. So I just wanted to show a little bit of that. I did my PhD in this university. And yeah, they have this very nice and specialized degree. So that's an example of what we have here over Europe.
All right, and then I jump in with the University of Washington. That's where I have been teaching, I think, since 2004. So the course is called Professional Continuous Education, and this part is localization. We have 3 quarters: Introduction to Localization, then Loc Engineering, which is my course, and then International Project Management. We teach over 3 quarters, 10 times 3 hours in the evening, because the course is primarily for professionals, people who are already in the industry, who want to go on the next level in their career, and of course for students. So that's roughly an overview. We also have some input from other universities already. Thank you to University of Texas in Arlington. They provided the details. It's then all on our webpage. The webpage is growing, and we need to customize it a little bit, but you will see that. All right, with that, I hand it back to Belén to introduce Stefan, and then we can go into the discussion.
Sure. Nice screenshot, by the way, of me being very Italian, even if I'm Spanish, but I look Italian in that picture. Yeah, sure. I'm super glad to introduce our speaker today. We are going to interview Stefan. He is the localization program director at Salesforce at the moment, and he has worked over the past 20 years in the language and technology space in different companies such as Cakewalk, Google, Yahoo, Symantec, and so on and so forth. So a wide experience that Stefan brings here. He's also been an educator, former adjunct professor at Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey. And I just met Stefan a couple of weeks ago, but I can see that we share this passion for education and for students and this nerdiness about this topic. So I'm super happy to have you here, Stefan.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited about this initiative. And as you said, I've been involved in education for a long time. And so, yeah, I'm ready to go.
Great.
Okay, so
yeah.
Let me start with the first question. We had a couple of things we wanted to talk to you about, and of course, we kind of shared these already, so you're kind of prepared, but still I want to do a lot.
No surprises, please.
No, okay. So we all who are in education experience the challenge that we have every year, every course we experience different new challenges, different students coming from different backgrounds. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you experienced in your time of education?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So just a little bit of background. I have an international background as well, and I studied in France and in the UK. So I was on the student side of being an international student. It was really interesting when I started teaching admins to be on the instructor side, seeing these international students, right? And so a few things about the course that I taught. It was called Localization as a Profession, which I know is continued and is taught by someone else at this point. Coming into the class was a mix of translators, interpreters, people who had vendor-side localization project management experience, and also advanced entry students. These were international students who were doing a master's degree or a graduate degree, and we're going to go to Monterey for just 1 year to do that portion of the degree. So my course was focused on the client side. It seemed like at the time a lot of the courses at MIS were vendor side focused. I know that there's been a lot of really good work done in the meantime to change that mix up a little bit around to have more client side people teaching the courses, and I think that's a really, really fantastic trend. My course was not technical in nature. I think that a lot of the students had already had a lot of the localization technology courses in the background. They were very well trained in that regard. This was really an introduction, a very deep and quick dive into what life is like on the client side. And so it was a combination of academia and sort of tricky scenarios, right? So then we get into the challenges, right? Because there's a lot of hierarchy that doesn't exist, or it doesn't exist as obviously in the United States, right? So people giving me different titles. I don't have a PhD, right? I mean, I'd like one, but they didn't give, I never got one, right? So they called me professor, whereas students from other countries were like, hey, dude, what are we doing tomorrow, right? So that was an interesting thing to manage in a way. And also with that hierarchy were different levels of either unspoken or very clear respect with regards to doing the assignments on time or doing them at all, right? One of the cultural things that came up that kept being a challenge, and I kept wanting to have the course focused on a little bit of the academic side, was I gave them writing assignments, and I figured they're all language people. They're used to writing in English, right? And so they did some research based on the readings we had gone over, and based on different really strange scenarios that are, for all of us on the client side, are day-to-day life. But if you haven't seen that, this would be a new situation for you. And so they would write essays, and depending on the different countries, I'm not singling any one out or any country out, there was not a lot of academic integrity the way I had expected it to be. When I was doing a master's degree in the UK, I couldn't write something like "the window is open" without citing 15 sources that backed it up, right? And so I would see these academic papers written in a certain form of English, right? And then this beautifully crafted, brilliant, peer-reviewed technical journal right in the middle of a paragraph with no attribution, right? And so that was a bit of an issue. And so I kept sort of, trying to explain it to the students, and there were some disconnects there. So that was one of the hurdles in the cultural side. When it came to actually writing their responses to these tricky situations, they would say things like, well, okay, I'm in this company now. I have to discuss this with my manager. I have to discuss this with my coworkers on the technical teams, right? They would give their managers 2 to 3 weeks leeway to schedule a 30-minute meeting with them, right? And there's all this deference and respect to the managers. The other teams, they had to deliver their technical solutions the next day or 2 days later, right? So I had to kind of manage those expectations a little bit with them. I said, in the United States, it's okay to ping your manager and say, hey, can you meet with me tomorrow, right? It's not as okay to tell an entire engineering team, you guys better do this tomorrow, right? Because they have their managers, and and so this was a sort of a cultural lesson that I learned. And I'll just wrap it up with, there's also a business perspective that I had in the class. So you're not more, I guess most often, if you work on the client side, most client-side localization teams don't have in-house translators. There's a trend, some of that's changing a little bit, right? But there's this shift from translating words or even moving files around, right? Project management in the classic sense, to localization as being product and customer focused and being program management. And that was also a challenge, I think, that the students didn't really fully grasp in the beginning.
Yeah,
right? So the idea is, think about what it takes to work as an international product manager and to champion the international users' experience, because that's your job there, right? Moving files around, okay, but the real job is that, right? So that's a very long answer, but it's a lot of things to unpack.
No, that's so true. But I just want to comment one thing, and you're absolutely right. There's so many challenges depending from what your background is. I'm lucky because I worked on both the client and the LSP side. So during my class, I put different hats on. So I try to, okay, now this is the view from if you are at the supplier company, but the client might see it this way. The other thing we had in the beginning of our course was the course here in Seattle back in the 2004 or so was, of course, focused a lot on Microsoft. And that has changed. We have a lot of other companies now there. And we wanted to get away from this Microsoft bias. And we hired guest speakers to talk. And that really brought a lot of new perspectives into the course. So there's not a solution for all, but I totally agree with these challenges.
Yeah, and I really like this debate because I think it's very different from what we have in Europe. Like talking about this client side, it might sound even obscure for people or not. We all know what we're talking about, but for programs in Europe, I have the feeling, and people in the audience can ask Stefan more about that, or people in the States, you can exchange ideas with academics from Europe, but I have the feeling that in Europe we basically focus on linguistic skills. So we want to train translators, and students joining the programs, they want to be translators. They don't want to be program managers or program managers and things like that. So I think this is a very interesting topic to discuss, and which things we can learn from each other from this learning perspective.
Yeah,
So going to the next question, Stefan, we talked about the challenges in teaching, but how about the challenges in finding and hiring new talent? Have you encountered any of those?
Yeah, and this is not specific to where I'm working now. This is over the last 15 years of managing teams in Silicon Valley companies. Again, coming from the vendor side onto the client side, or coming from the translator side onto the client side, right? There's this expectation setting, right? By and large, on the client side, of course, there are exceptions here, but we don't necessarily look for people with expertise in CAP tools or necessarily even TM management, right? This is, again, more a focus on product and user experience, right? So people coming in saying, oh, I speak X language, I can help with X language. If you're localizing into 40 languages, it's not really, that's not what we're hiring for necessarily, right? The other thing also, if you haven't done the client-side stuff, the whole evangelization thing, right? You're coming into a company where no one knows about localization, and putting it bluntly, no one cares, right? I mean, It's very, very negative to say it like that, right? But they don't know what I18N means, what L10N means, what TMs are, right? So get rid of your jargon, right? Come up with words that you know they will understand, right? Like a translation memory is a database that stores translations. That's all I have to say. And in the future, you say, it'll be in our database, this kind of thing, right? So that's a big shift, right? In terms of tech skills, right? I think in all the programs I've seen, people coming in from programs, the localization technology skills, I mean, you guys are doing an amazing job, right? I mean, this is around all of the different people I've met. It's like technology, I'm not so concerned about localization technology, right? In terms of on the client side, it's version control systems like GitHub and Perforce, right? Bug tracking systems, content management systems, the whole software development methodology, agile, Kanban, those kinds of things, right? Those might be new concepts, or if they're not new concepts, it might be new that they're hands-on. They need hands-on experience with those things, right? There's also the business perspective. A lot of people coming into it don't really look at it as that. They still see their jobs as kind of file management. You wait for the file, you send the file, you deliver the file, this kind of thing, right? To really shift left in a way of saying it, you know, upstream. You're the international user advocate, right? You're the international product manager, right? You need to look at data. You need to look at regional competitors, listen to the users, right? Nothing wrong with hanging out in user forums, right? In the languages you can read and check out what they're saying. You're never going to get bugs from those people, right? So that's in a way of you're a little bit of a spy into the user side of things, right? That's basically what I look for, right? And what I often don't really see enough of.
That's good. Good input. Yeah. Another topic, when we first talked, Stefan, you were really enthusiastic about this idea of education and localization.
Yeah.
And yeah, we keep telling bridging the gap or bridging between academics and education. What do you envision? What do you think of good ways to communicate between academics and educators and the industry, our counterparts? I mean, ideally, you are in a position where you do both. You bring your professional experience into the course, but that's not always the case. We have a lot of, I bet we have a lot of people from the academics in the audience right now. How can they contact the industry if nobody approaches them?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It's a really interesting topic, and I think it's an ongoing thing, right? As the three of us and everyone in EDUinLOC becomes more exposed to people on the academic side with their programs in translation and localization, but translation mainly, right? I think it's a matter of exposure, right? It's just this open, let's have an open community here, right? There's nothing wrong with you can ping someone it's not only Silicon Valley, right? But that's kind of where my life has been, right? Yeah. And have them do a 10-minute demo about what they do. How do they run a localization program, not a project, a program from the starting point? And a lot of people might be surprised at what the starting point is, right? The starting point isn't budget or even scoping or even files, right? It's look at the early design mocks. It's look at, talk with the product managers, right? Very, very upstream, right? I think that's missing. I think that one of the things that I was seeing at MIS, it's probably a little bit better now, but a lot of the students, even after 7 or 8 weeks in my class, they were saying, okay, localization is translation file management. They still weren't seeing that on the client side, it's a much bigger picture, right? So it's exposure. Talk to people on the client side, right? Bring them in as guest speakers, right? Have them show how to do a mock project or actually do a mock project in the curriculum, right? It's more like, this is less education and training. It's more like mentorship. Right, I think that's really where it should go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see that we try to invite as many guest speakers as we can from the industry, but sometimes companies are a little protective in immediately saying, well, you can't disclose the name, you can't disclose this or that. I understand that, but on the other hand, we're talking to the students. This is the future generation of LPMs, of directors, or whoever in the localization industry. This is a platform for you to advertise. Also, the tools that we use in our classes, give them to us for free, because this is free advertisement. People will learn this tool or this process and then replicate it in their future. So I think it's really important for the industry to see this as an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, I don't have to reveal all of the magic that we do at Salesforce. It's not about that, right? It's the general, the basic steps are going to be more or less the same, right? There might be specific things we do for a product or for a workflow or something like that, right? But on the whole, the basic steps are there, right? How you deal with them, how you manage them, it's up to you and the position that you hold. I also think one other final point in here is that even if you're never going to be on the client side, you have no aspirations, you don't care about being on the client side, if you're on the vendor side, the more you understand the client side, the more effective you're going to be, right? Yeah. And I've seen that in other vendors, right? They were like, well, what do you mean? It's the UI mods. When are we getting the files, right? No, right? You have to understand what the product is all about.
Exactly. No, thanks. I think, Belen, we have more time, unless somebody from the rear pokes us, hey, you have to finish up now. I think you had another topic, right?
Yes, we can ask the very last question, and then I would like to move to the networking, because people are already sharing very insightful comments on the chat. So I think we need to tackle that in the tables, and there won't be a Q&A session at the moment after this, but you can go to the table with Estefan and ask him directly. So that's to make that clear. So the very last question that I think most academics and educators would be interested in is, what should be the focus on education for the localization industry at the moment, and technologies, which skills are relevant? You already talked about this during your speech now, but anything else that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, there is something that could easily become a 50-hour discussion or debate, right? But I make a conscious decision between education and training, right? I think you can train people on different technologies and on different standard processes all day long, right? I personally, when I see people coming in on the client side, I don't really see any issues there, right? Everybody is pretty good on the technology side, right? The education side is more on the critical thinking skills. You're going to encounter things on the client side that will not tell you, they will not come to you and say, hey, I'm a problem, right? It's up to you to look at the UIs, look at how people are talking about the product, look at how people are talking about localization. Everybody thinks they understand localization, right? If you're on the client side in a company with 10, 20, 30,000, 40,000 people, how many of those 40,000 people do you think truly understand and value localization, right? It's in the single digits maybe, right? And those are the people on your team, right? So you have to read between the lines. You have to develop these soft skills. It's this critical thinking that you're not going to learn in a purely technical training program, right? And that's one of the things I was trying to show with these really terribly complicated, weird, vague scenarios that I was putting the students into, right? So that's the main thing. I think that can very, very well be done on the academic side, I think.
Definitely. Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah,
I would say let's wrap it up with that. Belen, you said, I just peeked into the chat window. Yes, there's a lot of feedback and questions, but we have different ways now. And let me quickly share my presentation here. And this is just, as a guideline, nothing fancy. So what we'll do now, this remote platform which LocWorld provided us is really awesome. Now we can sit on different tables and continue the discussion. So Stefan, Ulrich, Peng, Belen, and me will sit on dedicated or individual tables, and please feel free to join us. We can continue the discussion. If you want to, of course, you can also host your own table. If you think, oh, we have a good topic here, let's keep this separate and do a breakout session or something, absolutely.
Yeah, and we will also have Women in Localization. I want to say this because I'm a member of Women in Localization, and I support them so much. I think they do a great work. So if you want to know more about Women in Localization, the mentorship programs that they have and everything that they do, just join one of their tables and go to learn more.
Perfect. And then I would encourage everybody, if you have any interesting discussion points or outcomes or questions from that discussion, we will send another survey, a short survey, I promise, after this event to learn from how this was received, if you think this is very valuable, and how we should continue. So this is almost like a kickoff town hall today, but we want to do this on a regular basis. We're still debating probably every 2 months, and the survey will be critical as your input, also from the discussions on the roundtables. So that was it from my side. Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you to our board members. And I would say we can go to the roundtables now, right?
Yes, I think
Let's go to the round table.
Ulrich or Roxana, okay. They have to kick us out from the presentation.
Yes, Oksana might need to help us.
Hey, Ulrich.
Hi, Ulrich.
Hey,